Hey, Sox fans, welcome back. Hot takes and heaters under the FutureSox umbrella. We're doing the MLB centric stuff here every Tuesday night, live on the FutureSox YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. Join us. Jump in the comments as our Chicago White Sox have game 2 against the Texas Rangers. It's ongoing right now, late in the game. We'll duck and dive as the Sox are down by 1, but a lot of other stuff to get to with the week that was and what could be up ahead with what a week remaining until the trade deadline. With me, as always, Danny Miller. Hello, sir, and how are you doing?
Uh, I'm doing all right. Fighting off a little bit of it feels like a cold here, but other than that, okay. Just enjoying another gem by Mr. Garrett Crochet here this evening. Uh, and it being the 15th anniversary of the Mark Buehrle / Dwayne Wise catch perfect game. I am wearing my Mark Buehrle
Beautiful,
jersey.
beautiful.
And just hoping that the White Sox can pull another couple of runs out here and get a win very late in this game. But
Yeah.
man, the offense is doing like it has been, and it has its ups and its downs. So
Yeah.
how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Summer is just slip sliding away. I think I had talked about on the pod a few weeks ago that I went to a Chicago Dogs game with my wife and son. Well, this past Friday I went to a Joliet Slammers game, which used to be the Joliet Jackhammers years ago, independent ball out there in beautiful Joliet. I like that stadium a lot. It's
Yeah.
very kid friendly, very kid friendly. We got some great neighbors of ours that had some extra tickets. They've got a 2 year old that gets along with my son, and we had a lot of fun. And I'm no stranger to that stadium as I went to college out in Joliet. Nice little area. So we're just going to be crossing off those Independence, ballparks. They were playing the Windy City Thunderbolts with Big Bobby Jenks in the dugout managing that team. So that was kind of fun.
Cool. Quick fun fact, or maybe not so fun, but when it was the Jackhammer Stadium, about 21 or 22 ish years ago. I don't know if it's still there or not, but there's a statue out in front of that stadium that's got a mosaic tile base on it. I
There
happen
is
to
a
install.
statue. Yeah.
I happen to install the mosaic tile on that,
Wow.
as well as some others around Joliet. It was part of an art glorification. I don't a beautification project where they put up a bunch of
Yeah.
these
Yeah. Oh, sure.
statues all over Joliet, and they had a bunch of the tile setters union apprentices come out and do the mosaic tile on them. So yeah,
Nice. I went to school at University of St. Francis for undergrad, and that's where I met Pat. And I did broadcasting, journalism, TV, radio stuff there. And our college baseball team played at Silver Cross Field. That's what it was called back then, and that was their home field. Well, I was calling baseball games for the college with Pat. He was doing color, and I was doing play-by-play, and so we got to go into that stadium to the press box, and we got to announce from there for their home games in my senior year. So that was kind of a
excuse
cool
me.
experience. Yeah, they try to do a lot of fun stuff around that Joliet area with the casino coming around and a lot of art popping up. That's a fun fact. Did not know that.
Yeah, just a little something to throw out there. But
Yeah.
I'm looking at our feed here, and it says that I fired up another heater, and I don't understand why that happened. I'll have to give my producer a finger wagging. But since it's up there, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way,
Yeah.
because this is going to be. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a little fired up with the trade deadline
Yeah.
coming up here, and I know you know how to push my buttons. You have figured this out
Yes.
as we have come through the last 6 months, 7 months or so as a team here, and I have a feeling there's going to be some rants tonight, so might as well just
Yeah.
get myself ready to go.
Yeah, I want to circle back to Mark Buehrle maybe a little bit later. We'll do some of the more timely stuff, but
Sure.
and it is timely with his anniversary, and I do have a little a story about that game and just my thoughts on Buehrle in general. But yeah, I think the crochet stuff, as we discussed a little bit before we jumped on live, and Pat and I hit a bit of it on Sunday night with Good Guys Talk Back. Every Sox fan's talking about it. You can't avoid it in every article, in every op-ed piece. Foul territory. Doing stuff with AJ Brzezinski and the big questions of who's going where and what's happening. Nightingale came out on Sunday with his USA Today piece about maybe Crochet and Robert get packaged up. The Dodgers seem to be interested in stuff like that. Uh,
It's gonna be tough, I'm gonna say, but we'll get into it.
I do have this game in the corner of my eye. Not good for the Sox here, but um, it seems like a foregone conclusion, Danny, that Crochet's gone, and I'm
Is
really
it?
struggling. I'm really struggling. And Pat asked me, from a fan perspective, what would hurt more, Crochet being gone or Robert being gone? And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Uh, I oh man, I think Crochet being gone is gonna hurt more for me. Uh, I think Luis Robert Jr. Is somebody that we've seen flashes of his talent. Last year especially, we saw a lot of what we expected from him as he came up through the system and then made his way up to the major league club. And since then, we have not seen a lot. And you can blame it on injuries, although the injuries this season have been minor. I just feel like his head isn't in it with the White Sox here. I don't know if it's a case of environment or a case of poor coaching or just something that's on him. If he's just not in the right headspace, but maybe a change of scenery works out for him. Maybe it doesn't. But I'm tired of watching this guy chase pitches 3 feet out of the zone, down and away. There is so much level. I put a tweet out yesterday. The level of talent and the lack of being able to work your way through your biggest weakness year after year after year is so maddening to me that, quite frankly, as good of a talent as he is, I am just not. I don't feel it anymore. I'm sorry. I hope they get a king's ransom for him, and I hope he produces somewhere else. But I'm done. I- You know,
Yeah,
I
you're
want the
not
best for him.
alone. You are not alone in that thought process. I don't think they're going to get as much as we as fans hope that they get. That's usually the case, right? You have these emotional attachments to players, and you put them higher up than they actually are. And well, we need to get a whole farm system for Luis Robert Jr. Not so fast. I mean, he's plagued with injuries, and he does have those kind of qualities. Where I agree with you. It just feels sometimes that he's just like not even kind of there, just kind of going through it. And I know it's got to be tough when you're playing on this type of team and your head is wandering of, well, how do I get out of this? And where am I going next? And I got no help around me. And it's got to be a bizarre feeling. I can't even, I can't even put myself in that situation. Uh, he's got the crazy skills. And when he's on, it's unbelievable, from both the
Oh,
defensively
amazing
and
to watch.
offensively. But I would agree that if he's gone, he's gone. And I hate to say that in such a cavalier way, but Crochet is the one that I think I'm going to be really pissed about because I want them to invest in pitching, and I understand he doesn't have a huge body of work right now, but can't you just sense something? Can't you
Yeah,
just sense it if you've watched baseball long enough and the Sox and just, wow, this guy has got something here. He's got a nasty just being, a pitching dominance. And when he's only going to get stronger. Now, in terms of marketability for the White Sox, I think losing Robert would be huge. I mean, they center a lot of the promotions, a lot of the excitement. You got a lot of young fans that are wearing Robert jerseys because that sells, right? The 450-foot home runs, the Gold Glove, the crazy highlight reel stuff. But for me, losing Crochet is going to hurt.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we can't talk about it enough, and the fact that the White Sox have never invested largely on, signing a pitcher to a huge contract. And if Garrett Crochet continues to do what he's been doing, and like you said, looks like he can continue to get stronger, it might even be better in, say, next year and the year after, and it comes time for him to get a contract, chances are he's going to garner a hefty, hefty payday. And we just don't feel like the White Sox are going to pay that kind of money. So I understand the thought process of wanting to get what they can back for him when his value is as high as it is. But at the same time, there's 2.5 years left of Garrett Crochet. Now, let's just say he's got those two ARB years coming up. He gets in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million in our, if not, maybe slightly more. But again, we've been talking about the last couple of weeks how much money the White Sox are going to save in the upcoming years on their payroll and how low the payroll is going to be. I don't see why you can't keep him, bring up some of the young pitching that you have in your system that everybody expects to be really, really good. Fill out your bullpen, because the offense, if we look at it, how many games of now this year alone was 25 blown saves and out of 27 wins.
Correct.
So you're looking at a team that could be over 50 wins right now, or, you're not going to win all of those games, but let's just say you win half of those games. You're sitting a lot better with
it helps your 74 case, Danny.
Well, it sure does, but I don't even want to get into that. I'm just looking at more of the fact that maybe this White Sox team isn't so bad if we have a bullpen, if we have guys that can pitch.
And we knew that was going to be a problem going into the season, the bullpen.
Right. And if the offense wasn't so piecemeal as it has been this year, if you've got, let's just say, like I said, a $10 or $12 million, maybe even $15 million arbitration case for Garrett Crochet for next season, you're still in the neighborhood of like $55 million on the books if everybody else that's thought to go goes between now and then.
Yeah.
Why can't you have a handful of bats that you go out and buy in the offseason and still have a payroll under $150 million in the season? And it's going to be something that's respectable. It's going to put butts in seats next year.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that. Keep Garrett Crochet, build around him, be competitive. And the whole idea of this, AL Central is weak. Well, I think Cleveland and Minnesota and KC have something to say about that this season.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City definitely has been listening to anything that has been put out by Sox front office or ownership or whatever has been said over the last 8 to 10 months. I mean, Kansas City has just ate the Sox lunch, and they did so this past weekend. Pedro Griffol's record against his old team is absolutely atrocious, but it's just atrocious in general as a manager in a big league uniform. So, Clutch asked in the chat, who needs offense? And I think he was kind of sarcastically meaning like, well, right. Yeah, let's just keep all of our pitchers and, we'll figure out the offense some other time. But, he's right. We absolutely need offense. As speaking of offense, as we're talking right now, Benintendi, of all people, hits a home run to get a little closer to the Rangers here in the ninth inning. Sox just down by 1. We talk about the White Sox as an organization not investing in pitching. Well, they don't really invest in offense either. They don't invest in big, powerful bats, stud bats, the top of the free agency in terms of bats. They're not going after those contracts either. So, I mean, retain your pitching. Crochet's got a couple more years on his contract. There was some idea, I think maybe on Foul Territory, that the Sox might be competitive 2027. So if you're not getting an extension with Garrett Crochet right now, I mean, I'm just creating paths here. I'm not necessarily saying this is the right thing to do, but here's a path. You keep Crochet. You don't worry about extending him right now. You keep the dialogue open. If he's going to be around for a couple more years, there's no real threat. See, maybe we could find some way to go after him and pay this guy while you're also searching for some offense. Guys from AAA, AA, the young arms we've been hearing about, some of that talent starts rising up. And it feels like maybe, hey, Sox are investing in stuff. Now we've got something to, really get excited about as fans.
Well, and as far as Crochet goes too, that's got to be something that you would want to see as a starting pitcher as well too. You don't want to have the weight of the world on your shoulders. So if you build a team that he can feel like can go out and get him some runs to help him get, a handful of extra wins, and I don't know, maybe stop a few ground balls every now and again without kicking it all over the field, he's going to feel better about taking the mound day in and day out. He might turn into a perennial Cy Young type pitcher, where he's in the conversation year in and year out.
Yeah.
I think that would it would absolutely work wonders. And maybe, just maybe, if you're in contention for the big dance at the end of the year, maybe he is willing to do a little work with the contract to keep him around, to be part of a winning ball club and a winning culture. But I just feel like we can sit here and talk and it's all pipe dreams. It would be nice to see the White Sox do these things, but will
It
they
is.
ever?
It is. That's the ongoing dialogue. It. I think little stuff that happens recently is the problem. Why maybe pitchers will look at this club and be like, "Come on, you have no defense. You just like you guys are falling asleep on fundamentals." That was something that Chris Getz highlighted in the offseason where free agent pitching said no to the Sox because of the defense. But we're going to get better. We're going to clean up our game. This is going to be a place where pitchers are going to want to come. Well, you saw last night, I mean, he was probably on a variety of different guys late in the game. The Texas Rangers just take third base. We literally just gave them third base, and that run ended up being the tying run. And Sox, of course, do what they do in extra innings, and they lost. And then today, Tuesday, early in the game, the Rangers orchestrate a little league play, or maybe like a middle school, early high school play, just to bait, the middle infield, so the guy on third base could swipe home. And as a pitcher, as a former pitcher, okay, I hated that. I'm like, come on, what are you guys doing here? When the offense is sparse as it already is, you can't just give runs to the opposition. Good on the Rangers, though, knowing it's going to be tough to get runs off Crochet. The Sox aren't going to be able to figure this out. We'll swipe one while they're sleeping.
Yeah. Those are the heartbreaking moments that I always go back to, that quote of "we're going to be prepared to kick your ass."
Oh, yeah.
Every night.
Yeah.
And they're not. They are absolutely not prepared. And that brings up the next question that I have, at least in my case, is, we talk about Pedro. We talk about who would want to take Pedro's place, or why would the White Sox fire Pedro because it's a lost season. But I'm tired of listening to this whole lost season thing, and like it's not even worth it to get rid of him. And now we're at the trade deadline, right? And we're going to see a lot of young players come up. Brooks Baldwin just makes his way up in the last week. We've already seen the Lenine Sosas. We've already seen a handful of guys come up, go back down. Some stay up with the team. If you're not teaching these guys to be prepared and do things the right way, I don't want him anywhere near these
Yep.
new youngsters that are going to be coming. There's going to be a lot more of them here soon, real soon. So, what are we doing here? And why are we not prepared? And again, why would a pitcher want to come here when the position players are not prepared? I don't know about you, but when you pitched, it's not that you wanted to get out of an inning so quickly because you were just dying out there in the mountain. It's because you want to go as far as you can into a game.
Yes.
And you want to be, most pitchers have that hero mentality, at least the ones that I knew. You wanted to go out there and you wanted to be the guy that was just going to be ultra dominant so that your guys didn't have to do that much. But the only way to do that, to go deep into a game, is not throw 80, 90 pitches into the fifth inning. And
Especially a guy like Crochet, who's like on this secret pitch limit that no one wanted to talk about before the game. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, which I don't understand that either. We all kind of saw that it was going to be probably in the neighborhood of about 70, 75 pitches is the way things went tonight. And he was on cruise control.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I digress.
White Sox, its final, have lost their 76th game now, 27
9 in
and
a row.
76. Danny, that's 9 in a row. You said. So I think tomorrow's a day
Trey
game.
just said it in the chat too.
Okay, yeah. What a time to be alive, really. I mean, not just historically bad as going down right now as the worst Sox team in all of history. And in terms of history, we're talking 125 years as the Sox got out there and advertised the 2025 schedule, getting you all excited, celebrating 125 years. What have you done in those 125 years? Well, we're watching history right now. This is, where were you when it was the worst rendition of White Sox baseball? Because we're in it in 2024.
Who's the documentary maker out there right now?
Last Comiskey, man. The Last Comiskey
document
guys.
this season.
Yeah.
They need to.
Yeah.
They need to put together a documentary so that we can all revisit this. If maybe one day when this team is good again, we can all take a look back and kind of laugh at the
and they're flirting with the worst baseball team in the history of the game. You know, the 120 loss Mets team from 1962. It's but going back to your Pedro point, I think that was my argument a long time ago, and I think you were with me. And it, I think people jumped in and off of that thought process of, sure, it might not matter wins losses, but if you just don't think that he's the future and that things aren't going well internally and the team isn't performing the way, and you've got new guys that are coming up that are going to get their first taste of Major League Baseball, another heater for Danny. Why would you want him there, conducting this circus? And so my thought is, if you don't think the next manager is in the system somewhere where there's options, there are options in the White Sox system that they very well could be the next manager. That could be an interesting move of bringing somebody in right now. They're in the system, and tell Pedro, go play golf with Martin Maldonado, go hang out, just get away from here. You could move, Charlie Montoya over, I guess. You're paying him anyway, and then just bring in, somebody as bench coach, have somebody wear multiple hats. Maybe the person they want, they have somebody in mind, which would be very forward thinking of the White Sox. And that's really not how they do things, but maybe they have somebody in mind and they just can't have access to him right now. They will not be able to do that because they're obviously playing a season and it's going to take some time. So they're just saying, why not? We'll just stick with Pedro. What does it matter? Well, it matters because of the little stuff that we've seen recently. And when new guys, new blood come onto the White Sox and they get this sense from maybe other players that, oh, this is how we do things. Eloy this past weekend in Kansas City, just jogging to first base after he hit, a screaming Mimi down the third base line. And the third baseman really had to make a throw to get him at his 50% speed. So if he was just kind of hauling, again, he might be playing hurt. He probably is. And he's been giving, some sort of direction of not to run here. I don't know. That is a whole nother story of how goofy that stuff is. But guys look at that in the clubhouse and they're like, oh, that's okay. That's acceptable. This type of baseball is acceptable. All right. They say we're going to be bad anyway. I guess we really don't have to do everything right. That's garbage to me. I hate that.
Yeah, I can't agree with you anymore. Honestly, it is garbage. And I look at, let's just go back to, and I'm just using this as an example, but all the people that want to talk about how bad White Sox development is, right? And we talk about during the last rebuild where we were told this guy's going to be a bat and that guy's going to be a bat and this guy's going to be a 5-tool player and this guy's going to be a great pitcher. And the list went on and on and on, right? And throughout their minor league careers, most of those guys look pretty good. Those guys that we were sold over and over and over again. And then they come to the major league club and they kind of just fall flat. Now, that's to be expected with some players here and there, right? Like guys just hit that wall and they can't rise up to the next level. They'd already, given the most that they've given by the time they make their way through AAA. But it shouldn't be like that on a regular basis. And it makes me wonder, is it the White Sox can't develop, or is it what's going on here at the Major League Ball Club? Do they have the right people in place? Do they have the wrong people in place? And to me, it feels like they do. Because when you've got guys that are producing on a regular basis and they get here and they fall on their face, something stinks when there's so many, one after
Yeah.
the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just, I feel like there needs to be an overhaul. And I would not mind seeing some of the guys. Like Ian said that he felt Sergio Santos could be a guy
Mm-hmm.
to come
Sure.
up and coach this team. And, I'd be okay with it. I wouldn't be mad at some of these guys that are in the minor league system graduating with the prospects later along the way and having a know of the players that come up, with them.
Yeah.
But, then there's the other hand, like you say, when maybe there's, managers that are working with other teams or coaches that are working with other teams that just aren't available until the off season. That's fine and dandy. But I see no reason that, like you said, Charlie Montoyo can't take over for Pedro. The guy's got a pretty good resume behind him.
Former major league coach. I mean, come on, or a head
Better than
coach.
anything in the dugout that Pedro's ever had. Pedro was a guy that they got hired on because he wore many hats and said all the right things. But, since he's taken over in the dugout, none of that has come to fruition. He kind of doesn't sound like he even knows what he's doing half the time.
Yeah, and that's like the results are obviously an important thing. It's one thing, the wins and losses. He can only control so much talent wise, injuries. He's been given what he's been given, but with what he was given, and I think he probably had a hand in it with his relationship with Getz and how players were being brought in this offseason after they kind of stripped things down a little bit and said, okay, now we're going to get in this type of brand of baseball that I might be more familiar managing. The FAST acronym, like how we're going to play the game, and I think they picked his brain a little bit of like, well, who do you want? What kind of players will fit that? How can we set you up for success? And it again, after last year, it seemed like, okay, maybe he learned something, and this is now how I'm going to manage this team. This is what I want to get out of them, and we might not be able to outmatch people talent, but we're going to play a better brand of baseball. Well, when you're still not doing that, that's what I'm talking about. Like, how can I trust you with anything, Pedro? You clearly don't know what you're doing, and I think there's major disconnects everywhere. Again, that's just my thought as a fan watching this closely for 2 years with him in charge. So
Well, I gotta say, most of us feel the same way as you do, and there's that old saying that so many people can't be wrong. I mean, if we all feel like there's disconnects and people checked out, well, there's got to be a lot of truth to it, right?
Yeah, you know, it's extremely aggravating when you really think about it. When you sit and you think about it, of what has gone on the last couple of years, what we're about to maybe experience at the trade deadline, and what the future looks like. It's like we went through all of this in 2017, 2018 for very, very little. And here we are again. I'm sorry I keep like going over that, but it sits with you, when you're so invested in this team. It really it gnaws at you. I can't believe we're here again. This is
Well,
unbelievable.
and that's the thing. Like, if you're a longtime listener of the show here, if you're with us week in and week out, you could make the case and say that we're kind of running over the same things here over and over again quite a bit. But this team doesn't give us much to work with, because if you watch the product on the field, it's a broken record day in and day out. I made a tweet last night, after that loss where the Sox have a lead and then they blow the lead and then they lose by one in extras. You can't make this garbage up. If you were to, I mean, everybody, like Ian said earlier in the chat, he wanted to point out that he said this team would be historically bad, and thank you for being right on that one. But and And then you hear it's like David in the chat as well saying that we talk about how Pedro is doing, and he says that he is commanding the respect of the clubhouse. But when you hear things like that, you kind of go, you know what? Something's wrong. And
Yeah.
it's the same crap over and over again. And how are we not supposed to continue to talk about it? It's
I think some of the Tommy Pham comments from Foul Territory today with AJ Przinsky, where they kind of asked him, and someone said it on social media, and I kind of piggybacked, and I can't remember who, but I agreed with. I think Tommy Pham's he's trying to save face. What is he going to come out and sound like he is? Anti-manager. A cancer in the clubhouse. He's looking to find a new team. He's trying to get the heck out of
right. He's got to go somewhere
Chicago.
else and play ball.
So
And
he's
if
going to try to say all the right things and play nice right now. He's not going to give you the dirt.
He's got a bit of a reputation behind him already as somebody who will be vocal in the clubhouse and call other players out, maybe even get to the point of some minor violence, as we've heard in the
Sure,
past.
minor violence.
But yeah, I guess however minor violence can be. But he's also got to put himself out there as someone who can be part of another ball club and someone who can, when traded, can be useful to that ball club. And you can't just go out and throw everybody under the bus when you're playing for another job.
Yeah,
It is what
exactly.
it is. So I can't blame him for not throwing things out there, but he said some things early on in the season that kind of contradict that. He came in and he saw the disconnection in the clubhouse and he put it out there. So for him to change tune now, I don't know if I believe anything he says, but about
no,
Pedro
not
commanding the respect of the clubhouse.
It's tough for me to believe that. Speaking of players and movement and things that have happened since the last time we talked, Maldonado was DFA'd, Mendick DFA'd, and he caught on back with Charlotte. Nick Senzel was signed by the Sox from, I believe, the Washington Nationals. He went 0 for 7 in the Kansas City series. Why in the world he was brought in, I'm not sure. Maybe you can get a chance at trying to explain that. Lenine Sosa suffered and was optioned kind of because of that. Why is that something that the Sox are doing right now? Do you have any idea, Danny?
None. I can't make sense of it whatsoever. I honestly, if we're talking about some of these guys being purged to make room and make way for, what's going on between the draft and the trade deadline, then you make those moves to clear spots on the 40-man, right? You don't go out and sign a guy who has been released twice in the last year just to come up and fill some kind of hole when you've got guys in your system that should be getting as much playing time as possible right now. It doesn't make any sense to me. Well, at least I have, and some of the other guys around here at FutureSox have kind of given Chris Getz maybe not a lot of praise, but some praise for some of the moves that he made early on and trade returns, especially the Cease move. I think a lot of people gave him some pats on the back for that. But when you see moves like this, I really have to scratch my head, and it makes me question my trust of him. It's like it said in the chat, David Barista says Getz was dumpster diving. That's exactly what it feels like.
Well, Trey had a point that I thought maybe, and I put up there his thought of this could just be a precursor of, well, we've got middle infielders or something, utility guys. They're going to be gone. Paul DeYoung's going to be gone soon. We saw an opportunity to get Senzel just as a warm body. But the problem is, Sosa suffers from that, and I really thought he was benefiting from getting regular playing time. I mean, he needed it. He needed consistent playing time. He's not a survival of the carousel of back forth. I don't know who is, and it was nice to see him getting consistent at bats, getting there out in the field, and And it seems like he's hitting down in Charlotte, which is not a surprise.
No, not at all. And he had started to kind of come around a little bit, here in Chicago, and he had some ups and downs. But again, he's a guy that Ian and I've talked about over the last couple of years where he needs the time and the consistency. And when he does get the consistency, is he all of a sudden just turns it on. And he's one of those guys that, 80 to between 80 and 125 to 150 at bats, he goes through a slump and then he finds it again. And when he finds it, he just turns on. They don't give him that. They haven't. Every time he's been called up, people say, oh, well, he got consistent playing time at the end of the season. It wasn't every day. He got more than he had been, earlier on, but it wasn't every day. This year, he finally started to get it. And as soon as he started to get it, what do? They send him down. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. Senzel is not a guy that I feel like is even a placeholder and shouldn't be. I get, like we're seeing in the chat, a lot of people are saying Colson Montgomery isn't ready. And I appreciate you guys because I agree. But there are other guys on this team. Like, we're seeing Brooks Baldwin get his opportunity right now.
Yeah, tell me about that. Like, because he's got
Lenny Sosa should be back up before Nick Senzel comes around.
Baldwin. Well, Baldwin, Danny, though, has gotten playing time. Like, it's kind of been the opposite of what we've seen with other young guys that come up. They just sit on the bench. Maybe they get a pinch running situation here and there. Brooks Baldwin, exciting guy with some of the numbers he's put up in AA and AAA. And, man, he looks young. I mean, he looks like he's 12 years old. Wow.
He is. He's 23. So,
gosh, he is young. But he can play a variety of different positions, and he's gotten consistent playing time since coming up.
Yeah, and he'll figure it out. He's one of those guys. Another one. If we're going to talk about lost season like we have so much, I don't care if he comes up and hits 091 or whatever it was. He got himself a knock yesterday, an RBI knock, his first of his major league career. And you know what? The guy can throw the leather. He's speedy. He's got a good head on his shoulder, and he's a lefty bat.
Yeah.
He'll figure it out. Just let him play. I feel like the same way with all of these guys. Let the kids play. And I know that was the old, Tim Anderson, change the game thing. Let the kids play.
Well, let the kids play was like, or these kids could play was maybe late 90s, I want to say. Yeah. Oh, wow. That was when there was nothing going on. But some of those kids grew up to be the 2000 AL Central champs. So there was something going on there.
Yeah, and there was a lot of really good things going on in the farm system that led up to a 2005 World Series win, early on in those 2000s. So I don't know, but I honestly think that I would rather see guys that are already within the system, even if they come up and struggle, because this team is already going to be historically bad. Who gives a damn if they come up and they struggle? Let them get the feel for the game at the major league level. Let them play against major league pitching. And if they flail, they flail. But there's a lot of people out there that will say, oh, well, you're going to ruin them. Most of these guys that I'm feeling like are close, I don't think you're going to ruin them. The only thing that I worry about being ruined is, like I said earlier, is there a disconnect between the minor league system coaching staff and the major league system coaching staff, and what they're doing to ruin players who have been productive in the minors. So I don't
know. Can you tell me a little bit about Chucky Robinson? I don't know too much about him. He has been come up and he's been getting some time, limited, but he's been up getting some time. I don't know too much about him, to be honest with you, if I should get excited or not.
I think Chucky Robinson is probably more suited as a career backup kind of guy, but you could work out to be a solid backup. His bat has been decent in the minors. He's, nothing to really kind of bat an eye at and say, oh my God, like we have a future superstar in our hands. I mean, that's, the possibilities with Edgar Carroll.
Yeah.
You could throw some of those lines out with him, but I think Chucky Robinson could be a pretty solid backup. And then again, I said a couple weeks ago, I feel like I could potentially see a trade partner for Corey Lee. And we might see a whole lot.
I like Corey Lee. I like him.
there's a lot of teams out there that, maybe not. Is offensively, he's not the biggest juggernaut offensive catcher that's out there, but we're talking about a guy who's got one of, if not the best pop time in baseball. He's throwing runners out at a pretty great clip this year, and he's, people say he can work on block.
He's got
balls
some
and pass
power,
balls a little
man.
bit, but he hasn't been bad, and he does have some pop.
Yeah. Yeah, someone mentioned in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't get to it, but yeah, everything's going to look different in a week or so. I mean, we're still hanging around with that like 8.5, 9 in terms of guys that are going to be gone. There hasn't really been much movement at all in all of baseball in terms of trades. Anything big, that's for sure. And that happens closer, of course, to the actual deadline. Next, I think the 30th is when it's going to get usually pretty crazy. Now there have been years where I thought the Sox would definitely, be more aggressive. I think everybody thought, and it just didn't work out. But this is one of those dumpster years where we're just dumping, and you could just say, just blow it all up, man. And, you've got.
I actually saw you put a tweet out that said something very similar to that today.
But I guess that is probably a lie, because I still feel like holding on to Crochet is valuable.
I see the point in both sides of it. I see, like we talked about, they're not going to spend big on a pitcher, but there's no reason they can't go out and spend some money and get some bats too and be competitive. But at the same time, like, the biggest team that everybody keeps talking about being interested in Garrett Crochet are the Dodgers and the Orioles. And if you look at what the Orioles have in their farm system, you're obviously not going to pry Jackson Holiday away from him, even though he hasn't really been a super stud to start his career at the major league level. They have a lot going on.
They do
in their minor league system. And if we're talking about adding bats and we're looking at our farm system and the pitching we have in our farm system, we feel like we can have a really solid rotation without Garrett Crochet, which I actually do believe is extremely possible. You have to look at guys like Kobe Mayo. Connor Norby, which to me is like even towards the bottom of my wants from the Baltimore. They got a guy, international signing, 19 years old, Samuel Basayo. He's 19 years old and he's in Double A, and he's hitting, tankers over there. I think they have some really, really good bats that the White Sox could use. They got a couple of outfielders that have strong bats. They've got a couple first baseman, third base types in there that have some bats. If we can get productive bats back for a Garrett Crochet trade, then I'm all for it. But my main concern still to this day is I hope they don't sell on Crochet just to sell, because they don't think they can sign him in 2 years or extend them before then.
Yeah.
You've got to get at least 2 of the 3 guys that I just mentioned, or 2 hitters of that type back, where you're looking at, top 50 prospects. I don't want guys in the back end of the top 100. Garrett Crochet is pitching for $800,000 this year. You know what I mean? And he's in the top 3
I agree.
Cy Young candidate at the moment.
I agree. I think there will be I think there's a lot of different avenues in terms of fandom. And I know I got myself in one of those avenues, but sometimes in these situations with a week left to the deadline, I think about the different avenues one might put themselves in as a Sox fan of, hold on to Crochet, hold on to him through the off season, continue to try to work on, a deal. And if you really don't think you can, maybe next year at the trade deadline, the other avenue maybe is get rid of him right now. Like, just get rid of him. Something could happen to him. If somebody's giving you something that you're like 75% happy with, just, cut him loose.
For Drew, by the way, Drew Bogues.
Yeah.
You missed 2. So there you go, buddy.
And then there's just like, well, let's wait to the off season, and maybe something bigger will happen at the winter meetings. Does it really matter? I guess not. But I mean, that's where this type of conversation, the hypotheticals, there's no wrong answers really. It's just what you want as a fan, and I would love for them to build around pitching. Yeah, they just drafted possibly the next Crochet. I understand that. It seems like that's why they drafted Smith, because Crochet is going to be gone. At least they anticipate it. But eventually you have to start investing in something. You have to. I'm sorry. Whether that's an investment you make in free agency with a top of the line pitcher, or something that's homegrown that you really want to build around. You absolutely have to if you want to do this in a different way with success than last time.
Yeah. Again, I just don't want to be disappointed when it all goes down. There's like we have been talking about it for weeks. We've been talking about all night tonight. The team's going to look very different in a week. I just don't want to be disappointed in the returns.
So Drew's
Like Lewis
got
Robert and Garrett Crochet have to be hits. You have to hit on both of those trades.
this is a good question for Drew. I put it up in the chat here. With his innings limit, how can Crochet truly help a team this year? I say trade him in the offseason for a full season of Crochet. What are your thoughts? I wonder, Danny, if innings limits is just something that we've created as an organization, and that maybe another team might not operate that way, and they don't see it like that, and they might say inning limits, that's something you guys created. There's no rules that say I have to put, this isn't little league where you can only pitch 7 innings in a week.
Right.
I'm not going to operate that way. We've got a very specific way of how we know what we're going to do with him, and we know he can be helpful. So yeah, I'm not concerned, but I get the mentality of maybe some organizations are like, I don't want to push him. We don't know. Maybe we'll hold off. So what do you think, Danny?
Well, I mean, if you read between the lines in some of Garrett's interviews over the last, 3 weeks, month or so, when the talk of ramping up his well, I shouldn't say ramping up, his ramping up the fact that he's going to be on a limit of some sort, whatever that secret limit is at this point. Uh he's been interviewed multiple times and he said things like, I don't want to skip starts.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't want to just pitch an inning or two. And, going back to when, like you and I were young and pitching, I know that at least the teams that I played with, pitchers threw just about every day.
Yeah.
You had to
Sure.
stay loose, you had to stay limber. Now, you didn't go out and throw hard, but you had your routines that you went through, and each day was a little bit different than the next until your next start. And the way they baby these pitchers these days, I feel like is part of what has led up to a lot of these injuries. That and taking the sticky stuff away from the ball. Those two things. It's everybody wants to say it's because pitchers are throwing harder these days. They might play a role, but I think it's a very small role. I think it's more about how pitchers are being babied. Arms are not staying consistently stretched out. You're giving these guys way too much time to get bound up, and things start to rip and tear when they're stiff. So, in my opinion, yeah, I think maybe they did create something. I was a little skeptical of him being able to come out and do what he's done thus far
Mm-hmm.
to this point in the
Absolutely.
season.
Yeah.
And when you talk to him, he sounds like he feels great and he's stronger than ever. Well, you know what? He did a lot of preparation in the offseason and he stretched himself out and he never stopped throwing.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. You got to continue to throw. And I think that he is capable of doing it. He's shown it
Yeah.
so far.
Trey asks, so next Tuesday is the deadline, right? Well, we'll be recording in the evening, I'm assuming. So we'll be recording past the deadline, which will be a fun episode, chopping up everything that did or did not happen for the White Sox.
That'll be an
So
interesting one.
the next time we talk, Danny, Trey was wondering what our thoughts on the likelihood of Crochet being gone. And he said 1 to 10. So I'm assuming 1 is fairly unlikely, and 10 is, yeah, he's off in Baltimore as we're recording. Like, there's images of him, unloading his Baltimore luggage or whatever, wherever they're at. So
Yeah,
where
they've
are you
got
at on the 1 to 10?
I'm still at a 5. I'm right in the middle because
Oh,
I am not sure the
okay.
Orioles are going to put together the package Well, I mean, I just feel like the three names that I threw out there earlier are you got to have at least two of those are
Howard's at
solid.
a 9. Oh boy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. I think because of the media is throwing it out there as if it's a foregone conclusion that Garrett Crochet's
I'm
time on
over
the South
5.
Side is done.
Over 5. I'm probably hanging around. I'm in between Drew and Trey. I'll say 7. I'm
Yeah,
around.
I'm waiting for the news report of a mystery team. We haven't heard that yet. Where all of a sudden, and it's going to happen. Maybe not on the Garrett Crochet thing, but it happens during the hot stove season in the off season. It happens at every trade
Teams
deadline
keep
where
quiet.
all
They're
of a
under the
sudden there's a
radar. Yeah.
mystery team in the mix,
Yeah.
and super interested. Nobody knows who the hell they are. So
Yeah.
I'm waiting for those kinds of things to come up. I think the next week's going to be extremely interesting, but again, it literally comes down to don't do it just to do it. You better get what you deserve back for a guy who a lot of people are asking right now. Oh, the returns they're talking about for Garrett Crochet sound like they're better than Dylan Cease, and I'm going to say yeah, they should be because Garrett Crochet is a power lefty who's got 2.5 years left, and he's only 25 years old. So yeah, your
Dylan
returns
Cease had
should
a
be.
Dylan Cease had a he had a better body of work. Would you
He
say
did. He did. But I think the
durability?
potential for Garrett Crochet and his age and the
Yeah.
money left on his contract, arbitration, I think
Mm-hmm.
all of that plays well for him to get more of a return than Garrett Crochet, or excuse me, Dylan Cease did.
We've got around 10 minutes or so left is our usual time, around an hour or so. And I was wondering if we can circle back to some Mark Buehrle conversation.
Absolutely.
They've
On a
got they've
good
got
note.
some Mark Buehrle stuff on the post game here. I've got it kind of in the corner of my eye. You've got the Buehrle jersey. I've actually got I should have wore my Buehrle jersey. So my brother, I've got two brothers. One of my brothers was at the Mark Buehrle perfect game, and
Oh,
he actually saved his ticket stub. I've got it down here in the Sox basement, framed next to his Sports Illustrated that came out later that week or whatever it was the following week. So my brother was at the perfect game. My other brother was at Buehrle's no hitter. Okay, separate. Like they weren't together. Like my brothers weren't together. They were at different games, which is kind of rare back then, where all of us would tend to go to games together from time to time. So you got one brother independently at the perfect game, one brother at the independently at the no hitter, and then I was independently at the Rodon no hitter. So the three Murawski brothers have each seen one of those independent of like being with each other. I think that's pretty unbelievable.
yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that because I don't have a story that even comes anywhere close to
Yeah.
that. That's pretty awesome stuff, man.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy to think about it, but Buehrle should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just going to say that right there. I believe it's going to happen. It's going to take some time if he could just stay on the ballot. But with all these different committees and senior committees and golden committees, and somewhere somehow, I feel like he's going to find his way in. I just feel it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it's going to take some time as well too. As more and more writers get on the train of pitchers are managed much differently now than they were say 20, 30 years ago. You're going to have to take a look at pitcher's body of work differently than those guys from years past. And eventually, I think when you do that, you're going to see that Mark Buehrle was a guy who probably has the wins. He has, I mean, he's already in the hall for his perfect game and his no hitter. He's got plaques at least, anyways, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Uh, but I think that you're eventually somebody's going to go, you know what? For his time, he's deserving in
I
the way
mean,
pitchers were used during his time.
you would say that he was kind of the grandfather to this whole pitching clock. Just get the ball and throw it, and the efficiency that he did it, and the durability, 200 plus innings for what 10 years or something like that. He had a crazy run. His
Yeah,
all-star
average game
games.
time of hour and 35 minutes. Like that's all
Yeah.
you can't
It
you get that now half the time with a pitching clock
yeah.
that they've used as a rule.
Love
Guy
those
was
Buehrle
just it was
games.
a machine.
Gold gloves, all-star appearances, and you've got the you've got the accolades. Now he was never in the Cy Young conversation. He was never in. I don't even know if he was in the top 5 ever in terms of Cy Young conversations. And of course, he wasn't on very many winning Chicago White Sox baseball teams. Believe it or not. How about that? And maybe if he played in a bigger market that had more notoriety, things would be different. I think we could say that about a lot of different players over the years. But I think one day somehow he's going to find himself enshrined.
Yeah, I agree. There's, and I'm seeing it in the chat where people, like David's talking about he has the intangibles. He's got some of the key stats that, maybe when people are looking at wins and losses and strikeouts and all these things is their main factors and how they vote. As time goes on, I think that's going to switch. I think that's going to change. That we have to dig a little bit deeper and we have to look at
Yeah.
Gold Gloves, which Mark Buehrle had a bunch of, and he had a great pickoff move. And, you remember the play,
Oh, sure.
the
Yeah.
flip
Between
between
the,
the
yeah.
legs
Yeah.
at first base in foul
Yeah.
territory.
Yeah.
He's
He
a
could
highlight
field his
reel.
position. He could field his position. And you look at him, I mean, no offense to him, but I think he would agree. He didn't really look like a spry athlete,
No,
I mean, but he could field his position, soft hands. And he was how he finished with his pitching motion. And that's like pitching 101. You're ready to field, you know?
right.
And it's probably because he wasn't max effort, where he's all twisted up and everything on one foot after he threw the ball.
Well, yeah, and he stayed healthy. He pitched like you said, so many innings.
Durability. Yeah.
Durability. I mean, he was there and he was ready to go game in and game out. It was a very rare occasion where he had a blow up game. He was Mr. Consistency.
Yep.
And to me, that's important.
Set it and forget it. He was a crock pot pitcher or a slow cooker pitcher where you set it, you didn't have to worry about it. And when the time was up, you had a nice meal at the end of the day. So
Yeah, one of my favorite White Sox players of all time.
yes.
I'm
Yes,
glad
I
we're able to
agree.
sit here and revisit
Yep.
his accomplishments on the actual anniversary
Yeah,
of that game.
I was at his number retirement game. They lost handedly to the Oakland Athletics, if I remember correctly. But I was there for that, and so many other great moments. And yeah, he's one of my favorites. Really quick before we do have a little bit of time left here, the schedule came out. The 2025 schedule came out. Danny, is
Yeah,
this something that you look at? Do you travel in other cities to see the White Sox play? Do you
I
circle
haven't
anything
done
on the
much of it the
calendar?
last couple of years.
Okay.
I have in the past. Since I've been married, it's kind of gone a different direction. Which these last few years, fine, because there hasn't really been much to look forward to anyway. So I think I'd rather spend
Yeah.
my time traveling with the wife and enjoying vacation. But yeah, sometimes I look at I feel like some of these overseas series, those are it's a little bit weird to me, man. Like we're trying to
Yeah.
bring
Hmm.
baseball to other countries. This isn't like American football. American football I get, because you're trying to broaden the
Hmm.
horizons of football as a game, but baseball's played all over the world. It has been for a long time. Like I don't
Yeah.
understand these, some of these series, but I
Yeah.
digress. So, do you have
Um,
anything you're looking forward
I-
to, particularly on the
um,
2025 schedule?
a couple things. I mean, you've got Cubs Sox back to weekend series, and they're 3 games each. I mean, I know that there's a certain fan that probably cares about that, as I did maybe in my 20s. Giving Cub fans in my life a hard time. You're just again, teams weren't very good on the north side or the south side, and that's all you had to play for. And they were always on the weekends years ago, and they were 3 game series, and they were contentious and they were crazy. And so you got that back, which is not a huge deal for me, but I know that there are fans that like that's fun. That's going to be fun for them to celebrate that. during the weekend on the north side and then on the south side.
And they're both big money makers for both
Oh
sides
yeah.
of town too. So like, why they hadn't done this sooner, I don't
Why
really
was
know.
that on a Tuesday and Wednesday in like, May? I have no idea. No idea why they were doing that. But so that's back. I have never been to the city of Houston, and some people have told me don't rush. There's really nothing to see there. But I have gone to 17 or 18 different ballparks to see the White Sox. And so I've got a list. I got to cross off Houston eventually. And I just thought in the 20th anniversary of the '05 team, why not go to Houston to see the White Sox and kind of commemorate that where they wrapped it all up?
Yeah, you have one of those jerseys. You got a White Sox jersey with the old '05 World Series logo on the sleeve somewhere or something, or a ball cap.
Oh, man.
You might have to wear that when you go
Yeah.
down there for that 20th
Yeah, I've got
anniversary. I'm
plenty
just
of
saying.
gear. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like, Washington could be kind of nice. I lived in DC for a couple of years and I've been to Nats Park, but I've never seen the Sox play in Nats Park. So I'll have to look a little bit closer. I would highly recommend Boston, Baltimore, Seattle, Colorado's fun. LA, for the nostalgic, if you need an excuse to get out to LA and see Dodger Stadium, which I didn't think it was that great, but
Chavez Ravine. It's a little bit older of a stadium, but they say where it's at particularly, maybe not the stadium itself, but the placement of the stadium is supposed to be a
yeah,
site from what I
yeah,
understand.
I've been there, but it's something I guess for the history. I actually have a good friend of mine who's in Oakland right now. Just was out there for work, and he's like, you know what, I want to go to the Coliseum to see the A's. I probably will never get another chance, and I just want to for historic purposes. I was out in Oakland in 20, maybe 19. I did not care for the stadium at all, it was there to see the Sox. We traveled, spent most of my time in San Francisco, although there was some fun stuff in Oakland, but the stadium was nothing to get back to, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of been a knock on the Coliseum for a long time. I think even folks in Oakland aren't really they're not too shy about letting that one go themselves, and
Yeah.
which is difficult for us to fathom because as the old Comiskey went away, it felt like it took part of us with it, and
Yes. Yep.
see, I've never been to Oakland Coliseum, but I hear it's not a very good place
The
to
the thing I'll
play
never
or watch a
forget.
baseball game.
No, I mean, and that would give you. There was a stretch there, man, where we just could not do anything on the West Coast, and Oakland was a house of horrors. But when you go there, you're in awe of the foul territory. There is so much foul territory. You see it when you're watching a game, but when you're there live, like in person, it's unreal. It's like how do any foul balls get to the stands? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the perils of those old dual purpose stadiums, like
Yeah, yeah,
I think there's been a handful of them that have been built since then where they've kind of gotten the topography of laying out a field a little bit better. But
yeah.
man, I mean, you could look at like we can go right here in Chicago, Wrigley, where they played football,
Yes, yeah.
and it doesn't look anything like that. But
Hmm.
again, the dimensions of Wrigley have changed a little bit over the years as well too. And
Yeah.
you would think that they would figure out with modern technology, they would have been able to figure out a way to make that better, but apparently they have not, or
If
they
you could
just
put a
don't care
man on a
to.
moon, you got to be able to figure out a better way to design your baseball
I think it's
stadiums.
just bad ownership out there. People complain about Reinsdorf, but man,
Oh, there's a
you
lot of
gotta
other bad owners. Yeah, absolutely.
we are not alone.
Feel bad for those Oakland fans. I really do. And there's some committed ones out there in left field. They get. I mean, they are there. Their signs and their traditions and their rituals, and just like at every other stadium, there are those fans that are. Everybody's got diehards. And
Respect.
so. Yeah. Speaking of respect, hey, folks in the chat tonight, outstanding. Loved it. So
Yeah.
much great stuff.
It's a shame we can't keep up with all of it because I've been reading it all, man. You guys got some really
Yeah.
good stuff going on there. I'm glad you guys are almost
Yeah.
conversating amongst themselves.
Love
Awesome to
that. I
see.
love when there's internal conversations going on, bouncing ideas back and forth. And it really helps. I mean, it helps to fuel, when you, especially when you got a team that's lost 76 games already. It means a ton to spend your Tuesday night with us, and next Tuesday night should be really interesting as we
Yes.
kind of recap the trade deadline. So
Let's hope we
always a
come
fun
back with
time, Danny.
something really big to talk about. Let's get that
Yeah,
blockbuster.
yeah.
Let's hope Chris Getz gives us a reason to feel that we can trust him moving forward. But yeah, looking forward to it, man.
Want to thank Ian Eskridge, who does a fantastic job helping us out with everything here, and Hot Takes and Heaters, and is such an integral part of Future Sox. Make sure you're subscribing, liking, all that stuff to the Future Sox YouTube
Smash, smash,
channel.
smash.
Yeah, smash that, and find us on the old Twitter X. It's Danny Miller, so it's at Danny Miller FS, and I am Nick Murawski at Nick_GGTB. Hey, until next time, go Sox.